The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim and Fallout 4. Both big role-playing games made by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. Both pissed off old fans, both enjoyed by me. Both the first game of their series that I played, but both not perfect in my eyes. So, to see what they did and didn't do right, I'm going to compare the two. I'm not a big reviewer, I'm not an industry veteran, I'm just a player like any other. So my opinion is meaningless, and my conclusions pointless. Let's get started. In this episode of looking way too deep into these two games, I'll be taking a look at towns, cities and settlements. But also a lot of other things that they have a huge impact on, like the next couple hour video. But hopefully slightly less scattered. I'll be looking at all types of places where you can always find groups of friendly NPCs. Let's first look at the aesthetic of the towns and villages. This is just how the towns look and feel. For instance, the towns in Skyrim feel small. For one, this is because they are. The amount of houses is kind of absurd for a real town. Then again, we have towns here that are called stuff like 3 huizen, 5 huizen of 7 huizen. Which translates to 3 houses, 5 houses and 7 houses. So, I guess it's far from impossible. But the other part that makes them feel small is how they are set up. As in, they aren't. They are just built next to the main road people travel past. Sometimes with a secondary road to fit some more houses on. A lack of setup like this really makes it feel small and pretty insignificant. Which I'm fairly sure was exactly what they were going for. Compare this to larger towns, where they are divided into districts. Now, why do you think this is? Because it definitely isn't needed with the also extremely small amount of houses in these cities. Which here truly is way too low for a city of those sizes. Yes, even in those times. No, the districts aren't there because they have to, but to give the idea that they have to. Which in turn gives the illusion of a big city. Windhelm, for instance, feels big because of how many districts it has. It has the opening with practically only the inn. To the left is the districts for all the merchants, with the white vial, a smith and some stalls. Move north and you'll find the graveyard and the Hall of the Dead. Above that are the luxurious homes. Above the inn there's an opening leading to the palace. To the right of the inn there are the homes for the common people. And above that are the grey quarters for the low-class citizens, aka the Dark Elves. Outside of the city are the docks, and the stables on the other side of the bridge. Each zone is clearly separated by walls, small openings, stairs. This makes the place feel big. It doesn't matter that every zone has around 2 to 4 houses in it. Your brain just figures that since the city is built out of 8 zones, it must be a big city. And just take a look at other big cities in Skyrim. They all have setups like this. All split in smaller zones, which makes the entire thing feel big. This is how Skyrim gets away with having small cities. Then we look at Fallout and it kind of fails. Good Neighbor does it the best. The town is made up by a couple streets that are blocked off. Clearly 2 main streets and some side alleys. This will do for giving the illusion that it's a reasonably sized town. Diamond City and Bunker Hill also try this with separate farms, merchant centers and residential areas. But I think there are 2 reasons this doesn't work. One, it all looks the same. It's all simple houses, made out of salvaged wood and steel and anything else that could be found. And while this works great for the post-apocalyptic feel, it also makes everything feel the same. Compare this to Skyrim, where they of course also reuse a lot of building blocks, but almost no district looks exactly the same, nor any 2 cities. But what I think might be an even better reason is, the towns feel small. this isn't just because they are, or have few unique people in them, though this definitely doesn't help, but also because they feel small thanks to their surroundings. You simply can't make a place like Bunker Hill feel big when it lies in a part of an old city, with buildings that are both higher and wider all around it. The illusion of having a city when it lies in a very small part of a city is hard to sustain. Diamond City is even worse. The entire city lies in a stadium. And sure, stadiums can be pretty large, but not city large. Sure, quite a few people could live in it, and it's quite defendable. But it's simply too small to feel like a living city. In Fallout, you really have a familiar reference point, which makes it very hard to keep up the illusion. And Diamond City could have been very believable by using it as a key. Something to guard the important stuff in, and that people can retreat to if raiders come. Like old-time castles. That would make sense with the size. But make it an entire city, and not even building up very high, and your brain just realizes something's off. One thing I'll complain about in Fallout needs quite the introduction, so here we go. The place to start is the gameplay loop. This is what you'll be doing the entire game, or at least most of it. Meaning that this gameplay loop better be interesting. The loop is pretty much the same. You go to a dungeon, building, cave, anything of interest really. Why you came there can be anything. A quest directed you to it, you saw it in the distance and it looked intriguing, you saw it on your compass, or you fell off a high place into it and thought, well, now that I'm here, I might as well explore. What the place is and why you are there doesn't really matter. The point is that you are at a place where there is stuff to do, and loot to be gained. You do this a couple times until your inventory is full and you can't carry anymore. Either you head back immediately, or you do some more things, and really look at what you will take with you and what you leave behind. But one way or another, you will travel to a place to process your loot. In Skyrim, this is generally a place with a general store. In Fallout, this will be a settlement with a supply line. For both, you'll need to drop by your main base from time to time to process some special loot, generally gear you want to keep. To explain this to its fullest, we also need to take a look at what the loot is for each game. Any player of these games already knows this, but it feels right to quickly go over this again. In Skyrim, you mainly collect gear. Of course, also all types of crafting materials, but gear is the main thing. Cool gear you want to use is the nicest to find. Followed by gear you don't want to use, but want to keep because it's in some way special. Some do this more than others, I do this a lot. Then you have gear with enchantment you don't know that, so you take them with them to disenchant. And then you have the gear you'll find the most of. Stuff to sell. This is the stuff you carry the most of, and the stuff that is first to go when you find more interesting or more valuable stuff. This is the reason you'll look for a general store or smith. In Fallout, however, they make the crafting so much bigger and added settlement building that people now mainly want junk. From nuclear material to wood from ruiners. And because all of these are crafting materials, none of it is sold. Instead, players want it in a place where they can access it while crafting. Later on, players might also take weapons and armor with them, but this is almost always to break down into junk. But you knew all this already. Long story short, in Skyrim you mainly want shit to sell, while in Fallout you want shit to build with. Now that we got that out of the way, let's take a look at how loot is processed in both games. In Skyrim, if you only have loot to sell, you'll travel to a town, and find yourself a smith or a general store to sell it to. If you have stuff to disenchant, you'll also have to find an enchanting table. These are not hard to find though, as every cold wizard has one. If you have loot you want to store, you will have to travel to your generally one main base. For many players, the home in Whiterun. By the way, pretty clever to make the first home you can buy so central in the world. In Fallout, you'll have to travel to any settlement and dump the junk in the workshop. Maybe drop the weapons and armor and use the workshop mode to scrap them. And sometimes use this junk to upgrade weapons and armor, or participate in settlement building. Now that we have set the stage, we can start comparing. First thing we can take a look at is how long it will take. Most of the time Skyrim will take more time. You'll have to find a person to sell it to, specifically sell the items you want to sell, and most of the time go through 2 loading screens. And if you want to disenchant, you can add trying to find a table, though you roughly know where it is. In some places it can still be somewhat hard to find. I'm looking at you, Windhelm, and disenchant them. And then you can be sure to add 2 more loading screens. While in Fallout it is often, run up to the workshop, go into the inventory, press D to store all the junk, and you can be off again. But when you have longer loot processing, Fallout will take much longer. While Skyrim has, place all items in the correct container, possibly build and improve items, and possibly buy components to build and improve items. Fallout instead has, improve items in a more complex upgrade system, maybe buy some more components, and settlement building, on which you can spend as much time as you want. The balance seems off. In Skyrim you can spend 10 to 15 minutes in town for a quick drop off, and maybe half an hour when at base. In Fallout you can do a drop off in maybe under a minute, easily in 5, while working on your base can take hours. 4 hours is far from the realm of impossible. This doesn't really help with the flow of the game. I loved how in Skyrim I spent equal time traveling, dungeon crawling, and in towns. In Fallout this is possibly also true, measured over a long time. But in one session, this most of the time isn't the case. You can easily have a session that is only settlement building. Or have a long session in which you spend maybe 5 minutes total in settlements, only dropping off components. The balance is off. You can have sessions in which you have very little downtime as you are always on the road, so always ambushable. Or you have a session in which you are safe pretty much all the time. This does of course also have a positive. It gives you a choice how a session is spent. Do you want it to be relaxed and just do some settlement building? Or do you want some action? In which case, go out there and explore. This would be fine if it was that clear of a choice. But there are many instances of that choice not being a choice. When you complete a quest for a settlement, they are then put under your protection. Meaning that you'll have to provide food, water, beds and protection. Yeah, you can just fuck off, but we all know that isn't the thing you're supposed to do. And where the game can pretty much force you to do settlement building, it can also force you out. A settlement under attack means that you have to go off, or suffer the consequences. And feel bad for letting the settlers down. Or an even stronger fuck off and go explore is when your junk runs out. When you have no more building components, you will have to go off. If it was pure choice, it could work. But it often isn't. At times it's a nice choice, which adds to the flow as the flow fits you at that moment. But in other times, it isn't a choice, which takes away from the flow. And if that is the case, I personally prefer it being consistent. Let's also compare NPC interaction. Because where my previous point, the flow of the game, the balance, is much more subjective, here is a point that's much more objective. And a way bigger problem. And yes, Skyrim does it better. I know, what a shock. I think that Skyrim did something better than Fallout 4. But let me explain. And then let me explain why it's done worse in Fallout. The thing that tries to keep you from noticing this gameplay loop, that you are doing the same thing over and over again, are quests. Instead of going somewhere to find loot, now you go to a place to do something. To help someone, protect someone, steal from someone, or whatever they want you to do. And then tell them what a great job you did. It means it feels like you are doing something meaningful, like you are progressing. Even simple fetch quests add to this. They might be in no way elegant, they do feel like you're doing something meaningful. I'm not saying that doing quests isn't something meaningful, but it's a game, nothing is truly meaningful. But they're also games, experiences. How it feels is what truly matters. In Skyrim, the gameplay loop and the distractions from this loop link into each other very nicely. Quests direct you to what dungeons you go to, and quests direct you to where you process your loot. And it is in the same place where you also pick up new quests. Fallout sadly lacks this. When you are in a settlement, the people you bump into, the vendors you trade with, they don't give you stuff to do. There's no random, I saw a cave, I lost my gun, or go avenge my dead husband quest random settlers will give you. Yet these quests are incredibly simple and can be seen as busy work. They at the same time distract you from the gameplay loop. They are stuff to do and add to the people of Skyrim. Would the alchemist in Dawnstar be as unique if she didn't send you out to find the ring of pure mixtures in the same place as the wild file and all their alchemical artifacts can be found? Of course it isn't much, but it's something. And it makes her unique and might make you remember her. Which is also a point to bring up. Memorability. And to be fair, the base settlements of Fallout do have a bit going for them. Everyone remembers Sanctuary from the start of the game, Red Rocket from the trailer, Ten Pines Bluff as the first settlement you have to go and help, Starlight Drive-In as the first place you have to build a radio beacon, and also just for its looks, Grey Garden for being run by robots, Sunshine Tidings Corp for having Professor Good feels, the castle both for how you get it and its looks, but with the huge number of them, some will also not be remembered. Anyone remembers Kingsport Lighthouse? Or the Coastal Cottage? Probably not. And of course Diamond City and Good Neighbor have their own soul. Skyrim has it mostly the same. Most of the places are memorable. Riverwood for the place you start, Whiterun for your first big city and most likely host of your home, Riften as home for everything wrong with society, for thieves and corrupts, Windhelm for its castle and as home for the rebellion, Winterhold for its college, Dawnstar for its nightmare problems, Morthal for its lying in the swamp and its gloomy atmosphere, Solitude for being the base of the Imperial operations, its grand castles, its Daedric prince, and its awesome lay in the land on top of a stone arch over the river. And of course Markarth for its Dwemer origin, Silverblood Mafia and Forsworn problems. But Shore Stone with its spider-filled mine, or Carve Western with its sellswords holding out in the mine are way less memorable. The real problem for Fallout is its settlements. Once you take them over, that is. The idea of course is that you give them a unique feel. But most players aren't professional level designers, which means that most settlements players build will probably feel the same. Some people will have the creativity and time to make multiple amazing settlements, and for those players it is an amazing system. But for players that lack that creativity, lack the time, or just don't care that much, it either keeps the world empty, or it makes too many places in the world feel the same. I feel a bit more control by the devs could have done wonders. A ton of people have given ways how they could have done it better already. And if people want, I can devote a video to my thoughts on this. Or how it might be implemented in TES5. But this series is about comparing Skyrim to Fallout 4. A discussion like this is interesting, and maybe fitting with TES6, which we all keep in the corner of our eyes, but not really for this video. There is of course an interesting comparison with the settlement system and Half-Fire. And why I also have to express fear in everyone wanting settlements in TES6. But we'll get into that. To me, there are three things to look at. How much there is to build, what you need, and how much control you have. With how much, I mean how much you do it. How many places and how big are those places where you build your stuff. Fallout's base game has 30 places, with 37 with all the DLC. Skyrim only has them in the Half-Fire DLC and only 3 houses in total, And this makes a lot of sense. Like what I talked about in how you meet the first faction to join, Fallout is all about rebuilding society, while the Elder Scrolls is much more about preserving what we have. So rebuilding a lot in Fallout makes sense, while not so much in the Elder Scrolls. Of course, buildings would still be built, but at about equal speed as old houses break down, aka pretty slowly. Having only 3 places to build, with you probably picking one, makes sense for the world. So I would say that both do a pretty good job at this part. This is also one of my major fears with settlement-like systems in TES6. The idea of settlements works in Fallout, but the Elder Scrolls really isn't in a stage where we would need to build a lot of stuff. I heard ways they could do it, like colonizing a new area. But ask yourself this, would that still capture the spirit of an Elder Scrolls game? What you need is of course about the resources you need and how you get them. In Skyrim you mainly need wood and iron. Stone and clay are so easy to get that they really don't need to be considered. And some other materials for more specific items, like you need antlers if you want the head of an elk on your wall. In Fallout you mainly need wood, steel and concrete, with a load of other materials that you'll very often find you really need, like oil for generators or potatoes if you want to plant them. The difference between needing stuff in Skyrim and in Fallout is that you kind of need the materials in Fallout often now. Unlike Skyrim, where the home is only for you, in Fallout you need it for your settlers. If you don't have food items with you, you'll have to leave them without enough food. Or you simply don't have the items you need to finish what you're working on. I'll come back to this later, but Skyrim has more closed things to work on. So in my opinion, the things you need are far less annoying in Skyrim. That said, I think that how you get the items is done better in Fallout. Yes, I can finally say that I don't think that Skyrim does everything better, even if it is such a minor thing. You see, in Fallout you need to gather items in the world to build shit, while in Skyrim you need to do the same for most parts, except wood. That you need to buy from lumberjacks. But what you might not suspect is that I don't have a problem with the lumberjacks, but instead of gathering items in Skyrim. Buying wood from lumberjacks in Skyrim makes perfect sense. People make a living selling wood, so it makes perfect sense that you buy wood from them when you are building stuff. But then we get to item gathering. It makes sense for things like gemstones. Those things are rare, not exactly things that are sold en masse. And if you have a hunter style character, why pay another hunter to give you a deer skull if you can do it yourself? The main problem I have is with iron. There are towns that survive on selling wood. And in the same way, there are mining towns that survive on selling whatever they dig up. Why on earth can't you place an order at a mine for a fuck ton of iron? Probably because of balance, so that players can't easily gain a fuck ton of smithing levels. But why not create a new type of metal for homes then? Iron for weapons, but you can use rough iron for nails and hinges. For Fallout it makes sense. Transportation is on a low burn and very dangerous. There are no growing forests or open mines anymore. It makes sense that there are few people who make their money from extracting materials from the original source, especially when the entire world filled with those materials has been blown up, meaning that those things are just laying around. It's more consistent. All stuff has to be gathered from ruined places, or bought from people that got it from ruined places. In Fallout, scavenging the land makes a lot of sense. Not in Skyrim. It just bothers me how, for one item, you interact with people in the world that make a living off selling it, while for another material in the same position, you don't. And the exact same can be said about stone and clay. But because you get an unlimited supply of those, and thus forget them, I can't get myself to really be angry about that. And for that reason, I also once again fear for settlement systems in TES6. Because once again, TES is a world with professions. Some people are lumberjacks and cut wood for people. Some people are miners who mine metals for people who use it. And some people would be builders or carpenters who build houses and furniture. And I can get around that for building your own home. But once you start building villages, you should address this. In Fallout it makes sense. Everyone just needs to do whatever they can. This is also why many items look really do-it-yourselfish. They are. They are just put together by a random person who has no experience putting walls or chairs together. And it fits with the Fallout post-apocalyptic aesthetic. But that quite simply isn't the case with the Elder Scrolls. I also want to talk about how much control you have. How much control do you have over what you build? And here the two games are almost in complete odds with each other. In Fallout you have close to full freedom. You want to build a wall? Go ahead. You want to make one big building filled to the brink with beds? Because you either like it or are not interested in building something different? Go right ahead. You want to give every settler a unique house with clutter carefully placed? Go right ahead. You want to make all settlers sleep in sleeping bags on the ground? Well, you have a glorious mansion because you are above them? Once again, go right ahead. You want to make a castle out of concrete blocks? Go right, can you see a pattern? Skyrim on the other hand is on the complete opposite side. You choose something to build in a stationary workstation and a couple of items are placed in predetermined places and can't be moved. Basically having the same choice as you get most of the time. Do something or don't do something. For instance, my alchemy based character with an alchemy tower didn't build an alchemy station in the main hall. The main choice you have are what side wings you install. You have 3 side wings, each with 3 options. There are some pretty nice choices. Although it would be a lot nicer if every exit had all 9 choices. So you could have a library tower and a kitchen. But it's fine. Annoying, but fine. So obviously, Fallout gives a lot more freedom. So for expressing yourself, it is better. And in universe, it almost always looks great. It always looks like a settlement that the people in the Commonwealth could realistically put together. Skyrim on the other hand gives very little freedom. But also creates buildings that really fit the world. Of course, Fallout settlements are way more fun to play with. But I do want to point at 2 things that I think are good about the Hearthfire system. 1. It is less annoying than Fallout. I did just talk about that it is annoying that you can't place any wing anywhere. But otherwise, there are very few annoyances when using the system. The Fallout workshop can be kind of clunky at times, with pieces not wanting to snap to the right point, or snapping when you don't want them. Furniture that can't be placed directly next to a wall, lights or posters that float near walls or ceiling instead of being attached. I understand that this is really hard to avoid. To try and create meshes that go into ceilings while not poking through them into the next room. Sadly, this doesn't make it any less annoying. Speaking of annoying, some people will want to immediately murder me if I only so much as mention help defend Empire's Bluff. You'll also not run into the problem of being in the middle of building something and then running out of some items. In Hearthfire, everything you build is its own little project. So, no building the dinner table and then running out of cloth for the final chair. So while Hearthfire won't be able to leave you as satisfied as the settlement system sometimes will, it also won't leave you as annoyed as the settlement system sometimes will. 2. Yeah, remember? This was part of 2 points I was making. Anyway. 2. This was probably the best they could have done. Like I said before, whatever settlement you build in Fallout works. The aesthetic always fits the game. The tossed together shacks, big huts, and surrounding walls are all done in other places in the game. It always fits into the world. But I highly doubt this would be the case in a TES game. And here we are, back at me thinking this wouldn't work for TES6. Skyrim towns are way more nicely put together. always with individual houses, full roofs, nicely laid paths, not even to speak of interior design. While messy workspaces work fine in Fallout, Skyrim does need those nicer decorations. Places like Jorvaska, the atrium in the College of Winterhold, all the castles or longhouses of the Jarls. They need that way more precise placement of objects for the desired effect. Hell, I can even show that Bethesda knew that you can't make really nice looking places. Why do you think you don't get to decorate your own room inside the Institute? The only way I can see it making its way into a TES game is if they go for more of a cluster approach. Only allow you to play groups of things, like the groups of things we have in Half-Fire. And even then, I don't think it would work as well as it did in Fallout. And remember when I talked about quests about 6 paragraphs ago? Well, as far as I have planned, this will be the best video to talk about Side and Radiant quests, which also tie into the gameplay loop a lot. But for a long time I didn't have a good way of judging them. Until one day I was playing Minecraft, and suddenly I needed to leave. We all know those moments when we play something for maybe an hour, and then suddenly we are 4 hours later. Well, this place I needed to be was quite far away, so I had all the time in the world on my bike to think about why that happened. And then I related that back to Skyrim and Fallout. And it worked great. The conclusion is that I need to take a look at 2 things. How much stuff is there to do? And are there good stop points? For instance, when we look at Minecraft, there's practically infinite amount of stuff to do. To explain, I'm building a big bloody castle in the Gophers Minion server. For this I need to place a lot of bricks. But first I need to make those bricks. To make these bricks I need to first smelt a lot of bricks. But to smelt them I need to mine a lot of bricks first. And to smelt them I also need to gather a ton of wood to burn. This means that there is always something to do. But Minecraft doesn't really have any good stop moments. Everything flows very nicely into the next thing. While this makes gameplay very smooth, it can be very annoying if it accidentally eats away more time than you had planned. And neither extreme is good. Minecraft is an example that doesn't give you nice stop points. But the game that has too many or too obvious stop points can also be a pain. It really breaks immersion. Let's first talk about how much stuff a game has in it. A game with too much is overwhelming. Give a player 100 things to do and the player will have no idea where to start. It will probably leave them lost and pretty annoyed with you. The other extreme is just as bad, if not worse. Giving you too little to do, or at least not telling you clearly what to do, which also leaves the players lost. What am I supposed to do in this game? This can also happen later in the game, which is just as bad. What am I supposed to do now, game? So how do Fallout and Skyrim do? Let's first start with how much there is to do. When we look at locations, Skyrim stands on top. Fallout has around 275 locations. I added all the non-DLC locations from fallout4map.com. And Skyrim around 348. I added all the locations from skyrim.coolabs.com, then removed 23 for Dawnguard and 3 from Half-Fire. That's 35% more locations in Skyrim than in Fallout. Even if my numbers are quite a bit off, that is a huge difference. For Quest, I lack the clear, somewhat hard fact. But if I go from experience, I can easily say that my Skyrim journal was always much fuller than that in Fallout. With probably 10 times more miscellaneous quests. And while balance is always in everything a personal thing, I must say that I ran into the situation of what am I supposed to do way too often in Fallout. While it might be argued that the amount of quests you get in Skyrim might be overwhelming, you can still turn them off. And many of them are more quests that you do when you happen to be in the area. In my very old experience with a lot of fast travel, I remember teleporting to the quest I was most interested in, just ignoring many of the side quests. While in my ton of experience with not fast traveling, it always gave me stuff to do on the way, always keeping traveling interesting. So I must say that I, at the very least, am disappointed in how much there is to do in Fallout. And I say I'm disappointed because this is a balancing act. And everyone's preferred point of balance is different. What one person calls too little stuff to do, another will call overwhelming. So, for me it was too little. But please let me know how you thought the balance was. But let's talk about leaving points. Points that are great for putting the game down. I'm very happy to report that neither game asks you to quit. Instead, it has points that allow you to leave without the feeling that you are in the middle of something. In my experience, the general leaving points are ones where you finish something major. In Skyrim, this often is leaving a dungeon, but can also be when I finished preparing to head out again, or when I finished a big thing in a quest. Fallout pretty much had the same thing, but also added when finishing things in settlements. And here's the pitfall I've fallen in with Fallout. It's the exact same problem Minecraft has. I'm happily building a settlement, but then run out of some material before I finish what I was working on. This is not a satisfying point to stop playing. So I continue and go out into the world and find some of the material I need. So I probably go into a ruin, explore, pick up on a ton of loot, but when I'm done with exploring I don't find myself satisfied with completing that place. I didn't go in there to explore that place, I went in there to go get loot to finish what I was working on. So I finished what I was working on. That would be a good point to leave, right? Well, sort of. The problem then is that it is really easy to start doing something else in your settlement, and the cycle restarts. This results in Fallout having way less nice leave points. So yeah, once again, I have to say that Skyrim also does this better, as many more activities stand on their own. So for both having a greater amount of stuff to do, and having more quests that are better set up for leaving satisfied, I must say that I think Skyrim does side and Radiant quests a lot better. So in conclusion, to no one's surprise, I prefer the towns and villages of Skyrim over the cities and settlements of Fallout. They feel bigger, they have more character, as do the NPCs that live inside them. They connect better with the gameplay loop, and work better with side and Radiant quests, which are in turn also better done. Of course, my opinion is just that, my opinion. And I would love to hear other opinions. I would love to hear other people's standpoints on this. I just hope that I explained well enough what I think, and why I think it. And if I manage to power through it, hopefully next time we'll either have a look at factions and guilds, or maybe even the main quest. Or some other topic if anyone has the confidence and idea to give a different topic. This has been Phoenix, saying farewell. And when all is said and done, there are just two quotes left to be said. War. War never changes. Us! Rada!